All right, so today I wanted to start by talking a little bit about Russia collusion. Now, it's something that's been pretty thoroughly debunked for like over a year now, but we just got more and more evidence that it has been thoroughly debunked. In that, from Sean Davis here, on July 26, 2016, U.S. intel authorities learned that Russian intel knew of Hillary Clinton's plans to cook up a scandal alleging that Trump was working with Russia. Obama was personally briefed on Russia's knowledge of Clinton's plans. Now, again, it was a complete hoax, completely made up, and the real scandal coming out of this whole situation was the fact that the Obama administration illegally spied on the Trump administration, right? So the big problem being is that there's still a ton of people that believe this, like a ton of people that believe this. In fact, I would still say the majority of people, especially the ones that are on the left, not the ones that are on the right, but on the left, they still believe this, even though it's been thoroughly debunked. And that's a big problem with politics these days, is that things can be thoroughly debunked, but yet people still believe it. And that was a big thing coming out of the debates last night. Like, how many times did you hear both sides be like, "Oh, you're a liar," tons of times. And as an individual, you're overwhelmed because, well, everyone knows they both one of them has to be telling the truth, right? Or maybe they're both lying, but the whole point being is that it's so hard to actually know what's true out there these days. And the bigger problem is that the average person is absolutely terrible at it, because the average person just blindly believes what the TV tells them or what social media tells them. And again, you talk to old people, they insist, oh, the TV's telling me the truth, right? Like CNN, CBC, CTV, they're telling me the truth. And you talk to younger people, and they're like, oh, I don't watch the TV, so I'm good. Like but social media is every bit as biased, if it maybe even more, right? Like if you get your news on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, I don't care which, YouTube, which outlet it is, they're all overwhelmingly biased to the left. And that's the big problem these days. Like I was talking to someone on Reddit the other day, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I get a good mix of my news, on both sides." And I asked him, "Well, who do you get your news from on the right?" And he's like, "National Post." I'm like, "Are you joking?" And I brought up some more actual, cases. I brought up Steven Crowder. I brought up True North. I brought up probably four or five um, ones that I would consider actually conservative, or at the very least more conservative than the National Post, which is pretty much centrist. They like to pretend they're conservative, but they're really not. And they hadn't heard of any of them. Like, you think you get an honest and objective point of view, and you've never heard of Steven Crowder? You've never heard of True North? Like, are you joking? Like, and this is where people are at these days, that they think they're getting an honest and objective point of view of things, but yet they've literally never heard of people of the most accurate and honest people on the other side, right? Like, it's pure insanity, and this is why this kind of stuff festers. And I mean, the other thing that should come out of this is that many people should be prosecuted and thrown in jail, but that's not going to happen, right? That's not going to happen. It would be nice, because a lot of these people deserve it. I mean, for all we know, Obama should be in jail, depending on his involvement in the whole, um, BS, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's not going to happen, because when you're at the top, the laws don't apply to you, especially when you're on the left. So, anyway, the next thing I wanted to bring up is from Luke Rudkowski, and he links to an article. China forces 500,000 Tibetans into labor camps, and he says, "Why do we see this news always in Australia but not in the U.S.?" Now, again, it's a good, and I would argue Canada as well. Like, Canada is even more biased than the states. But again, um, why aren't we hearing about this kind of stuff? Like, I really, really cannot stand it that people genuinely think that China is just oh, yeah, they're a little authoritarian, but like, no, they are nightmarishly authoritarian. They are doing things that are far worse than what they think that a literal fascist is doing, but yet they could care less, right? It's just, and I think the main reason behind it is that the mainstream media doesn't criticize them because they're communists. Most of these people in the mainstream media are either communists, or they're at the very least sympathetic to communism. And the average person just blindly believes them, and therefore they never actually get the truth, right? So yeah, this should be this should be a major issue, but again, instead we're more worried about, just complete garbage issues. Like most of the stuff we're talking about, complete garbage issues, make believe racism, make believe climate change. Those are the big issues, not other countries imprisoning millions of people, and a lot of times, doing very, very nasty things to them, and you can look that up for yourself. So. Anyway, the next thing to bring up is from Mark Friesen. He says, let me get this straight. Using a plandemic to destroy the economy, including hoteliers, then spend $1 billion on buying up those hotels to ensure those hotel owners don't become homeless. The epitome of socialism. Now, this is just terrible, terrible government policy. Like absolutely brutal government policy because it's just terrible. Like, and this is the thing too. Like, the government tries to play dumb this whole time, but you don't get to play dumb over and over again. You only get the excuse of playing dumb for the first month or two of this, right? That's the only time you get the excuse. We are long beyond this. I don't care about some make-believe second wave they're drumming up right now, which is complete bunk. The daily deaths are literally like 10 times less than back in like May, or in March, April, and into May. Like the deaths are way down, which is just showing that the virus is less and less deadly than we already thought, and we already knew that it's less than the flu for the average person, especially if you're under 30 or 40 or 50 even, right? So it's just making the death rate go lower. I mean, for all we know, like, who knows where it's, I mean, it could be 1 in a million before we're done this. Like, that's kind of the pace we're on. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's already less than the flu, which is about, zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.1, I believe. It's already less than that. And the only group that really needs to be worried is the 65, 70 and over crowd. Aside from that, everybody else should be back to normal. If you want to wear masks, fine. If you want to have some slight precautions, fine. But anything like this forced mask garbage and shutdowns, and it's absolute insanity. Like, it's absolute insanity. And we have plenty of examples of there being no reason to do this kind of stuff, but yet the government completely ignores that, right? And destroying their own credibility in the process. I mean, Doug Ford, Exhibit A, too. People always like to claim, oh, you're biased, which I don't actually hear that much, but sometimes. And I always say, well, Doug Ford's handled this some of the worst of any premier, arguably. In fact, I probably would argue it. And again, obviously he's a conservative, but again, the reason that they don't ever give me credit on that one is that the left largely agrees with the draconian lockdowns, partially because they view the economy being hurt as only hurting the evil capitalists, right? And I think the other big thing too is that they think that, oh well, people don't need to be working, we can just give them free money, right? Like, people don't need to be working, we can just give them free money. So I think those are kind of the two main reasons there. And the last thing to bring up is from Charlie Kirk. Now, this is something you constantly hear. Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances if Trump wins on election night. But remind me again how Trump is the one who is a threat to the peaceful transition of power. Again, this is just a classic example of the left just accusing the right of what they're guilty of. They are the ones that didn't accept the results of the last election. They made up a totally bogus conspiracy theory to try and cover up the fact for that. And now they're accusing them of the same stuff that they were guilty of last time around. And you have one of the most prominent politician, left-wing politicians to exist these days, saying that you should not concede under any circumstances, but yet we're worried about Trump. Like, come on, people. Like, my God, are people ignorant these days? So anyway, that's kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, especially, but also BitChute and Parler. All those links are in the descriptions. You can find them all there.